What the heck happened to Alexander the Great's body? One of the greatest military generals in history, Alexander III of Macedon came to the throne when he was only 20. This is normally when you are out with your mates drinking and having a party, but no, Alexander decided to spend the first 10 years of his reign, rampaging through Western Asia and Egypt. When you and I would probably have still been emerging from a massive beer bender on a nightly basis, Alexander was taking over the known world and defeating all before him. He would go on to form one of the largest empires in history, stretching from Greece to northwestern India. He was an early celebrity, well known, and he didn't even have a TikTok account. In terms of battles won to lost, he was 20-0. The Floyd Mayweather of his time. This rock star of a king would eventually die at the ripe old age of 32 whilst residing in the palace of King Nebuchadnezzar II, in Babylon. You may remember that name from one of our other videos. Nebuchadnezzar sacked Jerusalem and the Ark of the Covenant was hidden under the Temple Mount during its destruction. But how did he die? There are two different accounts. Plutarch believes that roughly 14 days before he died, Alexander entertained Admiral Nearchus and spent the next day drinking with Medius of Larissa. He then developed a fever which worsened until he couldn't speak, dying shortly thereafter. Diodorus tells of Alexander drinking a large bowl of wine, followed by 11 days of extreme weakness. He did not develop a fever, but died soon after. There have been numerous theories surrounding poisoning. It was not uncommon to simply kill kings in those days, and Alexander had made enough enemies. Other extremely well-educated medical doctors and historians have concluded that he died from very real and natural causes. From acute pancreatitis to West Nile disease and/or meningitis. Let's not forget, there were no antibiotics in those days. A simple infection could be the end of you. Life was so frail that you didn't need political intrigue or your enemies to kill you. A simple bone break or basic injury could spell disaster. Either way, on the 11th of June 323 BC the Great One was dead. Due to his young age, there was no obvious heir. His son would only be born after his death. Political infighting and the lack of heir would spell the end for his empire, which by 275 BC had splintered and broken up. Talk about a cat fight. Meow. The enduring mystery of Alexander has always been, where was he buried? According to the Roman historians, Quintus Curtius Rufus and Justin, Alexander had requested to be buried in the temple of Zeus Ammon at the Siwa oasis in modern-day Egypt, as he wanted people to believe that the god was his father. He specifically didn't want to be buried with his real father Enigi. Clearly he had some serious daddy issues. It is believed that he was placed in a gold coffin that was created to fit his body. That's a bit vain? Did he think a normal coffin would make him look fat? Following the unraveling of his moral coil, his body became a topic of much negotiation. There was an assumed power associated with having it in one's possession. Three main characters vied for its control: Perdiccas, Ptolemy I Soter and Seleucus I Nicator. All were loyal generals in his army. Alexander's wishes to be buried in Siwa was not honored and was instead sent back to Macedonia. However, on its way there, the cart carrying him was hijacked by Ptolemy I Soter. He took the body to Memphis. This was the center of Alexander's government in Egypt at the time. According to Plutarch, at the behest of the oracle of Serapeum, his body was then moved to Alexandria, and by 274 BC he was interred in the Soma mausoleum. Soma or Sema means body in ancient Greek. Like all celebs, he had some high-level people come to visit his grave and act a little weird. Julius Caesar visited his tomb in 48 BC. Nobody knows what he did there, and then Cleopatra went there, but her reasons were a little naughty and she used the gold that he had been buried with to finance her war with Octavian. Emperor Augustus left gifts, but then Caligula looted the tomb, stealing his breastplate. I am sure he did other things because he was a raving weirdo. The Roman Emperor Septimus Severus had the tomb sealed up during his visit in 199 AD, probably because of what Caligula did. After that, things get a little hazy and it seems like its exact location was lost at this point. although it is believed that his son Caracalla removed some of Alexander's burial items from his person and placed them on top of the coffin. Later there were some claims to have seen his tomb, by the author Ibn Abd al-Hakam, al-Masudi and Leo the African. Leo did so in the early 1500s as a young man and claimed that he saw a small chapel, built in the ruins of Alexandria that was reputed to hold the body of Alexander the Great. He went on to add that many people would pilgrimage to the site to pray and pay homage, often leaving considerable donations. Now, Dark Histories doesn't want to be cynical, but we think this situation reeks of nonsense. Whilst we do not think that Leo was lying, we do believe that he was being lied to, especially with the reference to substantial donations. This comes across as a historical scam session by the locals, no different to someone selling celebrity farts on eBay. Okay, so we now have some context, but where's the old boy? Over 100 attempts at locating the tomb have been officially recognized by the Egyptian Supreme Council for Antiquities. One of the great historians who spent time creating a map of ancient Alexandria believes that the tomb was in the center of the city at the intersection of the Via Canopica and another ancient street. Further historians working on its location have come forward and largely agreed with this. One of the most promising leads was the claim made by Ambroise Shalitsi in 1850, that Alexander was buried under the Nabi Daniel Mosque in downtown Alexandria and that later in 1879 a worker accidentally broke through into the vaulted chamber from inside the basement of that mosque. He claimed to have seen a granite monument with an angular summit. This is only important because according to images from history, the Soma mausoleum had a pyramid or angular summit. Like all frustratingly tantalizing mysteries, further excavation and investigation was denied by the owners. Dark Histories thinks this to be a highly plausible option. Throughout history both Christians and Muslims have built churches or mosques on the holy ground of their enemies. Is that what happened here? Alternative theories have been suggested, for example that it is not Philip II of Macedon who is buried in the royal tomb 2 at Vergina, Greece, but it is Alexander the Great together with his wife Roxanne, while his son Alexander IV is buried in Tomb 3. Also based on the ancient historical sources he came to the conclusion that the breastplate, the shield, the helmet and the sword found in Tomb 2 belonged to the armor of Alexander the Great. The discoveries at Vergina are extremely impressive and worth a look. There is obviously no way to confirm this theory other than to ask, if that's not Philip, where did he end up? He was a very well thought of king and it's unlikely he would have been simply dumped somewhere else, or did he run afoul of the already mentioned daddy issues that Alexander had? One of our favorites theories and is based on mistaken identity which people often believe didn't happen throughout history. Guess what, the ancients were human too? In a 2011 episode of the National Geographic Channel television series Mystery Files, Andrew Chugg claimed that Alexander the Great's body was stolen from Alexandria, Egypt, by Venetian merchants who believed it to be that of Saint Mark the Evangelist. They smuggled the remains to Venice, where they were then venerated as Saint Mark the Evangelist in Saint Mark's Basilica. In an article in the Egyptology journal KMT, he showed that a 3rd century BC fragment of a high-status Macedonian tomb found embedded in the foundations of St. Mark's Basilica in Venice in 1960 is an exact fit as part of a tomb casing for the sarcophagus in the British Museum, which was long venerated in Alexandria as Alexander's tomb. The 2014 discovery of a large Alexander-era tomb at Kasta Tomb in Amphipolis in the region of Macedonia, Greece, raised the question of whether Alexander had in fact been returned to his homeland. However, the most likely explanation is that this is where he was heading before his cart was hijacked and he was taken to Memphis. Whilst all of this is happening, there remains the question of whether he actually made it to his requested resting place in Siwa, Egypt. Dark Histories believes that this is unlikely as the minute he died, his body became all about the wishes of those still alive. He would have been taken where he was needed or perceived to be needed and his wishes wouldn't have mattered much at all. So, after all of this we are not closer. Unfortunately, due to what he achieved, he remains the gold at the end of the rainbow. people chasing each other to locate his final resting place with no chance of success. More importantly, after all this time, this rock star's celebrity status remains unrivaled. Dark Histories believes the most likely clues lie beneath the Abi Daniel Mosque, because all written evidence points to his resting place having been in Alexandria. But until the historical world is allowed access, there really will be no conclusion to this eternal mystery. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please do drop a like and subscribe. We would also love your comments.